Lewis Hamilton announces he is terminating his contract with Ferrari to join Red Bull. Stay until the end to find out the real reason why Hamilton signed with Red Bull. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. What began as little more than a faint echo, an unverified murmur shared in hushed tones among engineers, team insiders, and journalists lingering just outside the motorhomes, has now erupted into one of the most seismic, era-defining transfers in the entire history of Formula One. In a sport already saturated with high-stakes drama, explosive rivalries, and unpredictable twists, this latest chapter is so monumental that even the most seasoned insiders are scrambling to recalibrate their understanding of the competitive hierarchy. Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, the face of an era, the man who turned dominance into an art form at Mercedes and briefly pursued a fairy tale legacy with Ferrari, has officially inked a jaw-dropping deal to join Red Bull Racing. With an eye-watering salary of $65 million per season, not including a complex network of performance bonuses, equity incentives, and brand integration rights, Hamilton's shift to Red Bull has detonated like a thunderclap across the motorsport world, signaling not just a transfer, but a tectonic realignment of the power structure in Formula One. For months, there were whispers, fleeting suggestions on obscure F1 forums, curious looks exchanged in press conferences, cryptic comments from team personnel, but nobody dared to believe it could actually happen. Hamilton, the very embodiment of Mercedes' golden era, had always seemed inseparable from the Silver Arrow's identity. Even when he made the surprising switch to Ferrari, it was interpreted by many as the beginning of a final, elegant flourish to his unparalleled career, a poetic attempt to resurrect the Scuderia's former glory before bowing out. But inside the Maranello camp, the picture began to sour far faster than the public imagined. Despite the red carpet rollout and the global media frenzy that welcomed Hamilton's arrival in Italy, the integration was never truly seamless. Fractures began to show almost immediately beneath the surface, as Hamilton's working style, feedback mechanisms, and strategic preferences clashed with Ferrari's deeply entrenched internal culture. Behind the cameras, within private debriefings and post-session meetings, it became increasingly apparent that Hamilton's voice wasn't carrying the weight it once did. Team principal Frédéric Vasseur, whose leadership style had already come under scrutiny during Leclerc's tenure, appeared hesitant to fully recalibrate Ferrari's operational framework around Hamilton. While the public statements remained composed, even complimentary, insiders frequently reported subtle but consistent prioritization of Leclerc, whether it was the order in which upgrades were tested, the structure of team briefings, or the strategic calls during critical race junctures. This growing schism wore heavily on Hamilton, who had not come to Ferrari for second billing. His frustration built race after race, mistake after mistake, culminating in several heated exchanges that, while never leaked in full, were alluded to in paddock rumors and the tense body language seen in the garage. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. At the same time, Red Bull was undergoing an internal revolution of its own. The shocking dismissal of Christian Horner, a figure so synonymous with the team that his exit seemed almost unthinkable, created a vacuum that reverberated through every level of the organization. With Horner out, and a new leadership structure scrambling to maintain stability, Red Bull found itself at a crossroads. But instead of retreating, they reimagined. The budgetary flexibility created by Horner's departure, combined with a shift in corporate philosophy spearheaded by senior Red Bull GmbH executives, allowed them to think boldly, aggressively. They weren't just looking to patch up the cracks, they were ready to rewrite the architecture of dominance. And what better way to send a statement, both to their rivals and the world, than by bringing in the most decorated, most globally recognized, and still fiercely competitive driver on the grid. The negotiations were labyrinthine, covert meetings in Monaco penthouses, encrypted Zoom calls across time zones, discreet intermediaries vetting legal clauses down to the syllable. Hamilton, ever the meticulous planner, didn't leap blindly. He wanted assurances, complete strategic autonomy, a say in car development, collaboration with engineers of his choosing, and perhaps most significantly, protection from the type of internal favoritism that had so deeply undermined his Ferrari stint. Red Bull, for their part, gave him almost everything. This wasn't just a driver hire. It was an institutional pivot toward Hamilton's vision of elite performance culture. The team is reportedly restructuring key elements of their technical and race day operations to better reflect Hamilton's preferences, even reassigning several longtime staff members to new roles to optimize communication flow and decision-making processes. The implications are dizzying. How will Max Verstappen, the reigning king of the paddock and arguably the most dominant driver of the last half-decade, respond to Hamilton stepping into his territory? Sources close to the Dutchman have already hinted at simmering tensions, describing Verstappen as visibly irritated during recent simulator sessions and internal meetings. The prospect of these two titans not just racing against each other, but within the same garage, feeding from the same data streams, clashing over strategy, and fighting for the same equipment, has ignited imaginations and fueled speculation that 2026 could be the most combustible season in recent memory. Every decision will be scrutinized, every radio message dissected, every overtaking maneuver treated like a political act. Meanwhile, Ferrari is left to lick its wounds, scrambling to control the narrative and regain credibility. Vasseur is said to be in emergency talks with several high-profile names, both from within the F1 paddock and outside, in an effort to stabilize the team after this public blow. Rumors abound about potential replacements for Hamilton, with everyone from Carlos Sainz returning, to wild card entries like Alex Albon or even Mick Schumacher being floated as potential candidates. But the truth is plain, losing Hamilton this way, mid-project, under pressure, and with visible disillusionment, will go down as one of the most significant setbacks in recent Ferrari history. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Back in Milton Keynes, the energy is frenetic. Engineers are already analyzing how to tailor the RB23's successor around Hamilton's preferences, his braking patterns, his cornering intuition, his relentless demand for stability under high-deg conditions. PR teams are coordinating global campaigns, partnerships are being renegotiated, and the media is in a frenzy. This isn't just about performance. It's about global optics. Hamilton's presence brings new markets, fresh audiences, and an elevation of brand prestige that no other driver can replicate. Red Bull isn't just betting on victories, they're wagering on a legacy, a cultural coup, and a redefinition of what modern dominance looks like. And Hamilton? He's never looked more energized. Insiders say his demeanor in recent weeks has shifted dramatically, more focused, more animated, more deliberate. Gone is the aura of restrained disappointment that hung over his final Ferrari races. In its place is a palpable sense of purpose, a flicker of that old hunger that once carved up the grid and rewrote the record books. As one longtime associate put it, he's not coming back just to race. He's coming back to conquer. The turmoil at Red Bull Racing has not just stirred the foundations of the team, it has completely redefined its trajectory. Following the bombshell exit of Christian Horner amid swirling allegations and a contentious internal investigation, the atmosphere in Milton Keynes was initially clouded by uncertainty. Yet instead of spiraling into dysfunction, the team responded with the kind of ruthless efficiency and calculated boldness that has defined its most successful eras. Horner's departure, while jarring, also came with a financial upside. His compensation package, long a subject of internal contention, was suddenly erased from the balance sheets. And in a sport where tenths of a second are bought with millions of dollars, that money wasn't going to sit idle. No, it was redirected immediately, strategically, toward orchestrating one of the most sensational moves Formula One has witnessed in the past decade. As the paddock buzzed with rumors of Max Verstappen's potential exit, those closest to the situation knew that this wasn't just paddock gossip, it was a rapidly developing reality. Verstappen's relationship with the new leadership at Red Bull had grown increasingly strained, particularly following the team's shifting power dynamics and the emergence of philosophical disagreements over the direction of the car's development. The Dutchman, who had once symbolized the team's present and future, was now inching closer to the exit. Whispers turned into leaks. Confidential files hinting at Verstappen's salary structure and exit clauses found their way into the inboxes of legal departments in Brackley and Salzburg. And when Jos Verstappen, Max's father and ever-watchful career strategist, was spotted having a hushed but animated conversation with Mercedes' top engineers in the Monaco paddock, it became undeniable. The Verstappen era at Red Bull was coming to an end. But Red Bull wasn't about to let this be the beginning of their decline. No, they were about to weaponize it. If Verstappen's exit signaled the end of one chapter, they were determined to ensure that the next one would be even more formidable, and that required a name, a legacy, a force of nature. Enter Lewis Hamilton. Behind closed doors, a delicate yet explosive series of negotiations began unfolding. Hamilton, despite having only recently joined Ferrari, was reportedly already disillusioned. The allure of Maranello had faded fast, obscured by performance inconsistencies, strategic missteps, and a culture clash that never quite resolved itself. While the Tifosi had embraced him as a modern-day gladiator, Ferrari's inner workings had left Hamilton increasingly frustrated. Key performance clauses embedded within his Ferrari contract, designed to protect both the team and the driver in case of underperformance, were suddenly no longer hypothetical. Sources close to the negotiations say that Hamilton's management team, long admired for its shrewdness, reached out to Red Bull shortly after the Bahrain Grand Prix. Initial talks were exploratory, cautious. But then came Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Japan, each race further confirming that Ferrari was not going to deliver the platform Hamilton needed to fight for an 8th world title. Meanwhile, Red Bull's top brass, free from the constraints of Horner's autocratic rule, were hungry to make a move that would redefine them. What began as a whisper between Hamilton's representatives and Red Bull's interim leadership quickly escalated into detailed financial planning, marketing projections, and legal vetting. Red Bull, always bold in branding and even bolder in execution, saw an opportunity not just to fill a vacancy, but to dominate the headlines and reaffirm their supremacy, on and off the track. A Hamilton signing wouldn't just signal ambition. It would be a psychological weapon, a declaration of continued relevance in the wake of losing their most dominant driver in modern history. As Verstappen's future in silver seemed to solidify, lawyers' fine-tuning clauses, logistical teams already outlining the transition, Hamilton's path to Red Bull became less a question of possibility and more one of timing. The symbolism was irresistible. Hamilton, the man Verstappen dethroned in Abu Dhabi, stepping into the very seat Max was vacating. The sporting drama was enormous. The commercial implications were seismic. Red Bull's marketing division was already sketching out the campaign, iconic imagery, dramatic taglines, a visual rebirth of the brand built around one of the most recognizable figures in global sport. Hamilton in a Red Bull suit wasn't just about points or podiums. It was about legacy, about revenge, about rewriting the final chapters of two titanic careers. But nothing in Formula One is ever simple. Legal teams, bound by confidentiality and clause-laden contracts, operated in total secrecy. Few even within Red Bull knew how far talks had progressed. Ferrari, blindsided, began scrambling to respond. Insiders report that John Elkann personally attempted to intervene, trying to persuade Hamilton to stay by offering performance guarantees and increased influence in technical development. But the damage was done. Hamilton's mind was shifting. The promise of a final high-octane act in a car that had proven championship-worthy for years, backed by a team willing to bend every rule and rewrite every script, was too powerful to ignore. In the span of just 8 weeks, the axis of Formula One had begun to tilt. Hamilton, once destined to finish his career in red, was now on the verge of donning navy and neon. Verstappen, the icon of the energy drink empire, was preparing to realign with the silver arrows. And Red Bull, for all its internal chaos and recent upheaval, was engineering not a retreat, but a rebirth. A reinvention born from crisis. A masterstroke forged in the fire of speculation and betrayal. As the paddock holds its breath and media outlets circle like vultures over the story of the year, one truth becomes undeniable: Red Bull is not done. In fact, they may be just getting started. The scale and depth of the agreement between Lewis Hamilton and Red Bull Racing transcend any standard Formula One contract in recent memory. This is not merely a transfer of a driver from one team to another, it is a seismic shift that redefines the balance of power within the sport and reshapes what it means to be an elite driver in the modern F1 era. The deal, valued at $65 million per season as a base salary, is just the tip of the iceberg. It excludes performance bonuses, milestone incentives, brand expansion commissions, and his evolving role as a global ambassador within Red Bull's sprawling empire of sports, esports, extreme sports, and lifestyle partnerships. The scope of this arrangement implies a long-term vision not only tied to victories on the track, but to a collaborative legacy far beyond it. Behind the scenes, Hamilton is no longer just a driver. He is a decision-maker, a strategic partner, a technical consultant, and a brand architect. Red Bull's transition to the new 2026 engine regulations has created a unique window of opportunity for the British superstar to shape the DNA of the future Red Bull car from its earliest conception. Red Bull Powertrains, the energy drink giant's ambitious in-house engine division, will now benefit from the insight, data preferences, and racecraft instincts of one of the most successful and meticulous drivers in the history of motorsport. Hamilton has reportedly already been looped into early-stage discussions surrounding the development of the 2026 power unit, from energy recovery optimization to turbo lag reduction, and even broader drivetrain integration with aerodynamic systems. This kind of access and control was never fully available to him during his time at Ferrari, where the weight of legacy and institutional rigidity often overpowered innovation. At Mercedes, he had considerable influence. particularly during the turbo-hybrid era. But even there, final decisions often rested with the technical directors and boardroom executives. At Red Bull, however, Hamilton has been promised something profoundly different: a seat at the table, not just behind the wheel. What makes this story even more captivating is that it goes far beyond clauses, numbers, or strategic influence. For Hamilton, this move is intensely personal. Those in his inner circle describe a man who is both spiritually reawakened and intellectually stimulated by this fresh chapter. After years of operating within legacy-driven environments, first at McLaren, then a dominant Mercedes, and most recently at Ferrari, Hamilton's pivot to Red Bull represents a complete reinvention. He is not just chasing an 8th world title to break records. He is determined to redefine the final stage of his racing career. Red Bull is not about comfort or heritage. It is about disruption, rebellion, agility, and vision. And that resonates deeply with a driver who has always sought to be more than just fast. Hamilton is seeking to rewrite the story of an aging champion. He doesn't want to fade away under the weight of expectations. He wants to explode into a new era, dominate under a new banner, and leave a legacy that transcends even the titans of the past. Within weeks of the confidential contract being finalized, Hamilton had already visited Red Bull's Milton Keynes campus multiple times under tight secrecy. Engineers and aerodynamicists were surprised by his level of engagement, noting that he requested in-depth briefings on the balance of downforce versus drag, power delivery maps, and tire degradation models under simulated high-temperature conditions. He reportedly spent hours in the simulator, adjusting settings not just for speed but for long-run consistency and driver adaptability. Even Red Bull's notoriously detail-oriented lead designer, known for guarding his development secrets, was reportedly impressed by Hamilton's capacity to understand car behavior on a microscopic level. From seating position feedback to steering wheel button configurations, from torque mapping to brake-by-wire calibration, Hamilton has dived into the project with a kind of energy typically associated with hungry rookies, not 7-time world champions. More than that, Hamilton's influence is starting to ripple across the entire Red Bull organization. Members of the junior driver program have been briefed on Hamilton's approach to telemetry interpretation and mental conditioning. Marketing executives are preparing cross-platform campaigns that blend his activism, fashion-forward image, and Red Bull's youthful, edgy identity. Talks are underway for Hamilton to appear in future Red Bull documentaries, lifestyle activations, and possibly even development programs for e-mobility and electric motorsports. The partnership is no longer confined to the track. It's evolving into a multi-dimensional alliance that positions both parties for relevance and dominance in the shifting sands of global sport. For the fans, the drama and anticipation are already palpable. Many remember the bitter rivalry between Hamilton and Red Bull during the 2021 season, a year marked by intense racing, controversial moments, and narrative-defining finishes. To see him now donning Red Bull colors feels almost surreal, like watching a plot twist in a story that was once thought to be finished. But Hamilton is not interested in nostalgia. He is chasing purpose, clarity, and legacy. His team has indicated that this move is not just about winning races. It's about building something from the inside out, something that carries his fingerprint long after the final checkered flag of his career falls. Behind closed doors, Red Bull insiders are reportedly buzzing with excitement. Some describe Hamilton's arrival as the intellectual arms race boost they needed for the next phase of their development. Others see him as a cultural force who will elevate standards across the board, from physical preparation to race strategy simulations. His presence is already said to be influencing how Red Bull plans its next chassis iterations, with aerodynamic tweaks inspired by his historical preferences in car balance, rotation, and stability. In meetings, his voice carries authority, not because of ego, but because of proven excellence. He brings an aura that demands attention, reshapes assumptions, and reorients focus. In short, Hamilton is not just joining a team, he is transforming it from within. Ultimately, what emerges from this partnership is something rare in Formula One, an alliance built not solely on results, but on reinvention. For Hamilton, it's about rewriting the story of his twilight years not as a descent, but as a crescendo. For Red Bull, it's about combining youth, risk-taking, and rebellious energy with experience, wisdom, and unshakable excellence. Together, they are not just aiming to win championships, they are attempting to redefine what a Formula One dynasty looks like in the modern age. And as the first shakedowns of the 2026 Red Bull machine begin, with Hamilton in the cockpit, eyes closed, listening to the engine note reverberate through his spine, the message is clear: this is not a goodbye to greatness, it's a new beginning. The Formula One world is no stranger to drama, but what has just unfolded is beyond anything the sport has seen in recent years. The news broke like a thunderclap across the motorsport landscape, shaking the foundations of not just two teams but the entire competitive structure of the grid. Within moments of the official announcement, social media turned into a war zone of opinions, theories, and emotionally charged reactions. Platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Reddit, and Instagram were flooded with memes, conspiracy threads, emotional tributes, and fierce debates. Fans from both the Hamilton and Verstappen camps took to the digital streets to either celebrate the unexpected twist or mourn what they perceive as a betrayal. Pundits and former world champions scrambled to give their hot takes, trying to make sense of the implications not just for Red Bull and Ferrari, but for the entire future trajectory of the sport itself. This isn't just a transfer, it's an earthquake that has shattered long-standing alliances, shaken the faith of team loyalists, and thrown open the door to a new era in Formula One politics and rivalry. Red Bull, a team that has defined itself for years through the explosive brilliance, raw aggression, and unfiltered intensity of Max Verstappen, has now opted to pivot towards something entirely different. In comes Lewis Hamilton, a man who operates with the precision of a surgeon, the mindset of a chess grandmaster, and the media savvy of a global superstar. It's not just a personnel change, it's a rebranding of Red Bull's very soul. From fire to ice. From youthful fury to seasoned intellect. The paddock hasn't just changed drivers. It has undergone a cultural reset, a philosophical shift in how it views competition, leadership, and identity. And yet, it's the timing of this bombshell that sends the drama into the stratosphere. While Red Bull was busy rolling out the red carpet for Hamilton, Mercedes was silently securing its next move, none other than Max Verstappen himself. Insiders with deep ties to Brackley and the FIA confirmed that talks between Mercedes and Max had been not only ongoing but nearly finalized for weeks, perhaps even months. The paperwork is reportedly complete, waiting only for the right moment to unleash a second wave of chaos. When that announcement hits, and it will complete a driver swap of mythological proportions. Lewis Hamilton in Red Bull red. Max Verstappen in Mercedes silver. Two titans of the sport trading places like chess kings crossing the board. This near-simultaneous movement of the sport's two biggest names is sending shockwaves through the paddock like a seismic tremor. It's not just the top two teams that are feeling the heat. Aston Martin, McLaren, Alpine, and even Williams are being forced to reevaluate everything. Long-term development plans, junior driver investments, sponsorship negotiations, every element of F1 team management is being thrown into flux. Suddenly, contracts signed just weeks ago seem outdated. Power dynamics that once felt stable are now crumbling. Everyone is scrambling to understand what the new hierarchy will look like when the dust settles, and no one wants to be left behind in what could become a radically reshaped championship battle. But beyond the immediate chaos, there's a sense of poetic symmetry to what's happening, almost as if the universe itself has orchestrated this switch. Verstappen and Hamilton have spent years locked in a rivalry that defined an entire generation of Formula One. From the controversial collisions to the championship deciders and the cold, calculated media barbs, theirs was a duel that transcended sport and became legend. Now, as if guided by destiny, they are not just changing teams, they are stepping into each other's legacies. Hamilton will walk the same Red Bull corridors where Max was crowned champion, where the walls still echo with the celebrations of past glories. Max will now sit in the same Mercedes engineering briefings where Lewis plotted his 7 titles, where the black overalls became synonymous with dominance. It's a full-circle moment drenched in symbolism, tension, and the kind of narrative arc Hollywood would struggle to script. And let's not ignore the human element. This isn't just a swap of helmets and uniforms. Behind these moves are real emotions, bruised egos, bold ambitions, and untold conversations held in secret boardrooms. Christian Horner, often at the center of Red Bull's fierce loyalty to Verstappen, now finds himself managing the arrival of the man who once beat them at their own game. Meanwhile, Toto Wolff, who has spent years locked in verbal combat with both Max and Horner, is now preparing to embrace the very driver he once accused of recklessness. Every handshake, every team radio call, every press conference from here on out will be dripping with subtext. Trust will be tested. Alliances will be scrutinized. The balance of power has not just shifted, it has been flipped on its head. And while many fans are still trying to wrap their heads around this new reality, there's an undercurrent of excitement building. Because while change brings uncertainty, it also brings possibility. Could we see a reborn Lewis Hamilton leading Red Bull to another Constructors Championship? Could Max Verstappen become the architect of a new Mercedes dynasty? The future has never been murkier, and never more exhilarating. This isn't just a moment in time, it's the beginning of a whole new chapter, and it's being written in bold strokes, with ink made of adrenaline and ambition. The shock of this transfer will be felt for years to come. It has altered rivalries, rewritten strategies, and turned the F1 paddock into a battleground of ideas, personalities, and visions for what racing should be. It is no longer just a sport, it is an epic saga unfolding in real time. And we, the fans, are watching history being written with every passing second. Hamilton had always been a master of navigating the shifting political tides of Formula One, but even he found the atmosphere at Ferrari becoming intolerably opaque. What began as a promising partnership, built on mutual admiration and lofty ambitions, gradually devolved into a cold transactional relationship marked by cryptic messages, inconsistent decisions, and a subtle but unmistakable favoring of the Monégasque star. The tension didn't explode all at once, it simmered. It was visible in Hamilton's tone over the radio, in the controlled frustration during post-race interviews, and in the clipped body language as he exited the garage. The early season offered enough warning signs to those paying attention. The decision to opt for a two-stop strategy in Australia had seemed baffling to many, but internally, it wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal. Hamilton had pushed for an alternate approach based on tire degradation data he trusted, only to be overruled. When the plan backfired, there was no accountability, just polite shrugs and a quiet pivot to the next race. In Canada, the issue wasn't the strategy itself, but the timing. Hamilton had spent the entire race managing pace, maintaining tire life with surgical precision, only to be brought in a lap too late after the weather began to shift. That delay cost him not just track position, but the morale boost he desperately needed amid a season that already felt unbalanced. What made the incident harder to swallow was the knowledge that Leclerc had been pitted proactively, with full support from the strategists, who had seemingly begun tailoring plans around him, not the team as a whole. These weren't just tactical missteps. For Hamilton, they became proof of a larger reality he could no longer deny: Ferrari was not building around him. Ferrari was not listening to him. The real fracture, however, was psychological. Hamilton had joined Ferrari with hopes of legacy, but what he found was exclusion. Internal briefings, where he once sat as an equal contributor, had become spaces where his input was politely noted and promptly disregarded. Leclerc, on the other hand, was not just treated as the future, he was treated as the present. Engineers gravitated toward him. The data team tailored simulations around his preferences. And when Hamilton did speak up, the response was diplomatic but empty. We'll look into it, let's revisit that next week. We're still evaluating options. It was corporate speak for no, but we don't want to say it outright. The defining moment, the one that shifted Hamilton's frustration into resolve, occurred during the Spanish Grand Prix weekend. After 3 consecutive races with balance issues and uneven tire wear, he requested a minor chassis modification designed to improve mid-corner stability. The request wasn't ambitious, it was basic. But the team came back with a firm rejection: resources were tight, and the modification wasn't feasible in the current cycle. Hamilton accepted the answer publicly, but internally, he was stunned. Less than 24 hours later, the exact same modification, almost to the spec, was installed on Leclerc's car. The message couldn't have been clearer. Hamilton wasn't just a secondary driver, he was dispensable. A stopgap. A legend parked in the wrong era. He didn't rant. He didn't storm out. Instead, he withdrew emotionally. The paddock noticed. Journalists speculated. But only a handful of insiders understood the scale of the breach that had occurred. Hamilton, for all his calm exterior, was making a decision. And Red Bull knew it. When Red Bull approached, it wasn't with a glossy brochure or a vague promise of performance. It was with precision. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner weren't just pitching speed. They were offering control, dignity, and involvement. They knew exactly how to speak to Hamilton's core, not just as a driver, but as a thinker, a brand, a strategist, and a leader. Red Bull didn't say, "We want you because you're fast." They said, "We want to build something around you because your voice matters." They promised aerodynamic packages that would be tested with his feedback at the center. They spoke about setting up the car to suit his unique braking style and corner entry preferences. They offered him a role in choosing the engineering talent around him. They talked about reshaping media dynamics, where his narrative wouldn't be dictated by tabloid leaks or biased soundbites, but by direct, orchestrated messaging. Most importantly, they gave him what Ferrari withheld: respect and autonomy. They painted a future where Hamilton wasn't a hired gun, but a cornerstone. And Hamilton listened. Because for all the glitz and heritage of Ferrari, what he'd found was hierarchy, not harmony. He had spent decades in the sport, breaking records, redefining what a champion could be. What he needed now wasn't more trophies, it was purpose. Red Bull gave him that purpose. They weren't just offering a car. They were offering a seat at the table. Even as the world speculated about contracts and performance clauses, the truth was far more human. Hamilton was done being sidelined. He was done being thanked and ignored in the same breath. Red Bull's offer was a mirror held up to his own frustrations, and it reflected a version of Formula One where he could drive, influence, build, and win on his terms. In that moment, the choice wasn't difficult. It was inevitable. As the motorsport universe reels from one of the most shocking developments in modern Formula One history, the idea of Lewis Hamilton, arguably the greatest driver of all time, donning the electric, high-voltage overalls of Red Bull Racing has ignited a firestorm of speculation, excitement, and disbelief across the globe. Fans are not just curious, they're obsessed. Forums are exploding, social media is ablaze, and experts from every corner of the racing world are scrambling to understand what this seismic shift really means. The vision of Hamilton walking through the Red Bull garage, flanked by engineers in navy blue, the energy drink logo blazing across his chest, is no longer a fantasy. It's becoming a reality. The roar of anticipation is deafening, and it's only getting louder by the hour. People are already imagining the press conferences, the body language with Christian Horner, the eye contact with Max Verstappen in the debrief room, the subtle glances that will tell stories deeper than any headline. This isn't just a career move. It's a sporting rebirth. It's the kind of moment that transforms legacies and redefines what's possible. Whispers are growing louder in the paddock about how Hamilton will integrate into a team known for its cutthroat focus, its relentless precision, and a culture that thrives on dominance, not diplomacy. Red Bull is not a place for the faint-hearted. It's a machine built for supremacy, and Hamilton's entry could either supercharge that machine or throw it into an entirely new gear. Will he challenge Verstappen's throne directly, setting up the most explosive intra-team rivalry since Senna and Prost? Or will he become the mentor figure, the elder statesman who brings an unparalleled wealth of experience to a team already dripping with success? Every insider has a different theory, and yet none can deny the sheer magnitude of the gamble. Hamilton, at 40 years old, isn't easing into retirement with a farewell tour. He's diving headfirst into the most competitive and politically intense environment in the sport. Every detail of the 2026 season will now be magnified. Every twitch of the steering wheel during free practice, every change in engine mode during qualifying, every heartbeat on the pit wall will be dissected and analyzed. The radios will be monitored with an intensity never seen before. Every word from Hamilton will be replayed. Every interaction with his engineer will be scrutinized for clues about his mindset, his confidence, his intent. And while some critics may question whether he still has the razor-sharp edge required to tame a Red Bull at full throttle, his most loyal supporters see something very different. They see a man who has already climbed the mountain 7 times and is now hunting a new peak, a peak nobody believed could even exist. Imagine the sight of Hamilton exiting the Red Bull RB22B successor during pre-season testing. The cameras will be everywhere. The silence before he removes his helmet for the first time will feel like an eternity. That first smirk, that first glance at the timesheet, it could shake the foundations of the sport. Because this isn't just another season. This is Hamilton rewriting the rules of longevity, ambition, and reinvention. Most drivers fade with age. Hamilton? He's about to enter the next phase of his legend with the intensity of a man possessed. There's a glint in his eye again, a look that says he didn't come to participate. He came to conquer, and to do so in the lair of his fiercest rivals. The entire paddock will be on edge. Mercedes, the team with which he built an empire, will feel the sting of betrayal. Ferrari will watch cautiously, knowing that the balance of power has shifted again. McLaren will remember the past, but Red Bull? Red Bull will brace for impact. Their fortress, built around the brilliance of Verstappen, is about to be tested in ways no one saw coming. Because when Hamilton steps into that cockpit, he brings not only championship pedigree but the aura of a man who has nothing left to prove and everything left to win. He's not trying to match anyone's legacy, he's trying to eclipse it. And the battlefield has been chosen. The grandstands will be packed like never before. The energy will be electric. Children wearing Red Bull caps will chant his name while lifelong Hamilton fans will wrestle with the surreal image of their hero racing under a different banner. The storylines will write themselves, a battle of generations, ideologies, temperaments, and histories. Verstappen's raw aggression versus Hamilton's calculated brilliance. Horner's sharp diplomacy against Hamilton's transcendent charisma. Every race will feel like a championship final, every podium a political statement. The 2026 season won't be remembered as just another year in Formula One history. It will be remembered as the year everything changed. And as the engines fire up in Bahrain, as the world watches through screens and from the grandstands, as commentators try to find the words to capture what's unfolding, there will be one undeniable truth hanging in the desert air: Lewis Hamilton is not finished. Not even close. He isn't fading quietly into the background. He isn't becoming a ceremonial figurehead. He's reigniting his fire in the most daring way possible, in the most hostile territory imaginable, surrounded by doubters, rivals, and relentless expectations. But that's where he thrives. That's where legends are forged. That's where Hamilton belongs. And when the lights go out for the first race of 2026, the world will hold its breath. Because for the first time in a long time, Formula One won't just be about the fastest car. It'll be about the man who refuses to let his story end.